Any time that the academic session starts, there are bubbling activities on the campus, and sometime, unfortunately, they ends up in very unfortunate events, happenings, where even suicide, death, do take place on campus. And perhaps that was the reason that the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, decided to constitute a committee. We know a little about this committee. It's called Raghavan Committee. You being with us this morning, we'd like to have your views as to what were the salient recommendations of this committee, which ultimately became as regulations and are being followed.
Thank you. Now, first, a small correction. In the sense that this committee was indeed formed by the Government of India, but on the directions of the Honorable Supreme Court, in an ongoing matter, which is Principles of Colleges of Kerala versus State of Kerala, Union of India and others. Till this committee actually went into studying the problem related to ragging, it was generally believed that ragging is more of a disciplinary matter within institutions. Obviously some torture takes place. Okay. There is some psychological trauma. But I think the greatest contribution, the understanding of the concept of ragging and the menace of ragging, which has been made by the committee, which is, as you called it, the Raghavan Committee, yes, is that ragging also has an academic dimension. Ragging impacts on the standards of education and higher education in particular.
Yeah.
This recommendation, which is the single most vital recommendation of the committee, was, I'm happy to report, accepted by the Honorable Supreme Court. And that is why, based on the recommendations of the committee, all statutory councils which are covered in terms of entry 66 of the Union list in 7th schedule of our Constitution for determining and setting standards of higher education, were then mandated and directed to formulate regulations which then become legally binding on educational institutions to follow. UGC, for instance, has come out with its regulations. This was on 17th June 2009. The UGC regulation on prevention and prohibition of the menace of ragging was brought into effect. The findings of the committee, the major recommendations of the committee,
yes, sir,
could be dealt with at different planes. One, at the level of the institution. It was made mandatory that every educational institution of higher learning should necessarily have anti-ragging committees, monitoring committees, squads. Persons have to be made responsible for the activities to prevent ragging. Certain activities will have to be taken at the level of the institution to orient students as they move in. You rightly said, this youth which is bubbling with so much of energy, unfortunately is put to a lot of anxiety once they enter the campus, and then they realize that the freedom from the closed system of the discipline in school gets replaced by a free license to affect even adversely the right to human dignity, particularly on juniors. Why is it that no one rags one's own peer? You don't rag your classmates, but you always rag someone who is more vulnerable, who is new to an environment. And this has, of course, its own psychological, human kind of reasons. One being that in any society, someone who comes new is viewed with a lot of suspicion. Someone who's come to now avail and partake a share in the facilities which you were enjoying earlier. It could be water resources, it could be land assets, it could be environment.
Yeah.
So the same thing gets transported in a very different but a minuscule way, but a very menacing way in our campuses. So that is one. Then at the level of the institution, it was made mandatory that you will have to first inquire into any incident of ragging. Not only do you prevent it, you sensitize people, children, youth, and then if for any unfortunate reason there is an incident of ragging, then you take prompt action.
Yeah.
You have to inquire, fix responsibility, and punish. And if the victim of ragging is dissatisfied with the action taken at the level of the institution, then even first information reports should be mandatorily filed with the police, the local police, and the local police and local authorities must necessarily act.
Yeah.
Then at the district level, again, you will have committees which would be headed by the collector, which will also have the superintendent of police in it, the principal of the college and institutions in it. There would be NGO involvement in it. They would continue to take stock, and the entire effort is you sensitize students against the menace and send a very clear message that not even a stray incident of ragging would be tolerated in the campus.
Yeah.
Then at the state and the university level, they have to similarly monitor. Then at the apex level, at the national level, we have what is called a helpline. It has a very easy to remember number, 5522, which is toll free, and which BSNL operates in collaboration with the Educational Consultants India Limited and the UGC, where complaints are registered, queries are raised, or even anxieties are expressed. It could also do some kind of a counseling. From the time that this helpline was launched on 17th June 2009, over 191,000 complaints and queries were logged with the helpline. That shows the degree of the scale of sensitization which could be brought. Out of these, most were satisfied in terms of the information sought through the response by the call centers, and then nearly 448 were considered serious cases of ragging, mild to serious, and in 40 of them action has already been taken. These were all reported to institutions. The mechanism is that the institution, the local police, the SHO, the warden of the hostel, the head of the institution are first informed by the helpline. Then the level is upscaled to that of the regulatory bodies and the university and the state authorities. And finally, at the level of UGC and various other apex bodies, these complaints are registered.
Sir, we see the significant impact of the regulations that were made on 17 June 2009. Yet, we have seen very recently one or two stray cases where a very serious incident happened. So, would we not like to go into the genesis as to why even after so many recommendations, regulations, then squads, district level committee and others, things are happening? I feel that the students coming from school for 12 years of very rigid education, where the uniform, heavy bags, and all those kind of things. The student, when it comes to the graduation, that is the school, college, or university, he comes with some kind of bubbling ideas to have a little fun and all those kind of things. A lot of energy perhaps she brings along. Does the report also touch upon this issue as to how to channelize that energy so that energy is utilized in some activities to start with and then they go on to the studies?
Sure. You see, the committee had the benefit of advice from some experts, other than the members of the committee themselves, who were also experts in academics of high repute. For instance, I recall that Dr. Aruna Bruta, who's a very famous psychologist, was involved with our committee. She gave us some very valuable advice. And one of the suggestions made by her are very pertinent to the issue raised by you, and which is that the preparation to face the world has to begin in the school itself, at the level of the school itself. Counseling of students in so many different ways, subtle ways, more direct ways, but must begin at the school level. You have to prepare students for the life which is to be led as a youth, where there will be not so much of an intrusive or incisive regimentation and discipline, where even parental control is somewhat loosened, as it should be. And we must have faith and trust in our youth. And that's the way to go about it, and that's the way to psychologically develop human resources to become confident young men and women. And now, alongside, also, like they say, there's a very old adage that our idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Yes.
So colleges and institutions have also been advised to productively channelize energies in a creative way. We used to have the National Service Scheme, we have the NCC, we have the Fine Arts Societies, we have debating societies, cultural programs, and that's the way to go about it. And bring about bonhomie and familiarity between strangers, younger strangers who enter a campus, and those who are already there. Now, there is a transition period within which, or during which, a young person entering the adult world of a campus needs to get familiarized and settle down and feel comfortable. And that has to be done. There can be no one, stop shop for that, a solution for that, one-stop solution for that. And it cannot be one size fits all. Each institution, a medical college, will have a different kind of an approach. An engineering college ought to have. There would be certain core elements which are all mentioned in the report of Raghavan Committee, but that's what has to be done. You're right, there are instances, but mind you, when there was no monitoring through our helpline,
There was many, yes.
we could never compare whether there is a trend towards higher number of such cases, or whether the trend is declining. Last year was the first year when we had complaints being logged. So I'm sure next year, when we do a month-to-month comparison, an annual comparison, a comparison across institutions and types of institutions and classes of institutions, we would be in a much better position to say whether incidents of ragging have declined or not. It's nobody's case that ragging would be eliminated overnight. It will take time. What has been there for decades, if hundreds of years in our institutions, where some institutions even used to take pride in the fact that students used to take pride that their ragging was the most severe. Now we have come to a situation where ragging, like smoking in public, is now banned totally. There can be, and we have made it very clear in the recommendations. We also pointed out there are many human rights which are violated whenever even a small incident of ragging takes place. Many of the laws of the land in the Indian Penal Code are directly attracted. Unauthorized trespass, physical assault, causing grievous injury, attempt to homicide. Now, all